All right, so today we're diving into something that seems like it's just everywhere you turn these days, artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it's definitely having a moment.
But we're not here to talk about, robots taking over the world or anything like that.
No robot uprisings today.
We're actually looking at a different kind of impact AI is having, the amount of energy it uses.
It's a really important aspect of the AI boom that doesn't always get the attention it deserves.
And we've got a ton of research to unpack on this from people like Alex de Vries and analysis from firms like Semi-Analysis and New Street Research.
We're going to break down just how much electricity these AI systems use, and to make it real for everyone, we'll be focusing on a tool. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of ChatGPT.
Yeah, it seems like ChatGPT is everywhere you turn these days. I mean, it just exploded in popularity.
It's true. It gained 100 million users in just 2 months,
Wow.
which is kind of mind-boggling when you think about it.
Yeah, that's like the entire population of, I don't know, France and Belgium combined, all deciding to try ChatGPT at the same time.
It's a massive amount of growth in a very short amount of time. And it's not just ChatGPT either. This surge in interest is showing up in the hardware too. NVIDIA, the company that makes those super powerful chips that basically fuel AI, their data center revenue shot up by 141% this past year.
Wow, that's a lot of GPUs.
It's a clear sign that the tech world is betting big on AI.
Okay, so more AI means more energy use. But is it really as simple as just plugging in a few extra computers and calling it a day?
It's definitely more complicated than that. When you really get into it, most of the studies out there tend to focus on the energy that's used during the initial training phase of AI models. It's kind of like, teaching a dog a new trick. You need a lot of repetition, a lot of reinforcement to get it right.
Right.
And just like training a dog takes time and effort, training an AI requires a ton of computing power.
So how much power are we talking about here? Give me an example that'll really drive it home.
Okay, picture this. You know how much electricity an average U.S. household uses over like 40 years?
Yeah.
Well, training a single AI model called Bloom used that much power in one go,
Whoa.
433 megawatt hours to be exact. And other models, like GPT-3, consumed even more than that, a massive 12,287 megawatt hours.
So we're talking enough electricity to power a small town, maybe even a whole town for a year, just to train one AI model.
Yeah, it's a pretty energy-intensive process, to say the least.
So that's just to teach the AI the ropes, so to speak. But what about once it's actually up and running, using those skills that it's learned? Is it still using that much energy?
That's a great question, and it's where things get even more interesting. Running these models, which is also called the inference phase, is like when the dog actually performs the trick after you've trained it. But here's the thing. This running phase could actually use even more energy than the initial training.
Really? So it's like the dog's victory lap after learning a trick takes more energy than all the practice sessions combined.
In a way, yes. Semi-Analysis, which is a research firm, they estimate that OpenAI might be using something like 564 megawatt hours every single day just to keep ChatGPT up and running.
Every day.
Every single day.
Wow, that's more than some entire countries use in a day.
It really puts things in perspective.
It does, and that's just for one AI tool, right? ChatGPT. What happens when AI is powering, like, everything? What if Google, for example, went all in on AI for every single Google search?
And that's a fascinating scenario.
Right.
It's a bit of a hypothetical worst-case scenario.
Sure.
But if Google were to use AI like ChatGPT for all of its searches, and we're talking about 9 billion searches every single day, Semi-Analysis estimates that they would need over 500,000 of NVIDIA's most powerful servers.
500,000.
500,000 just to handle that kind of workload. And that translates to a truly massive amount of energy consumption. We're talking to something comparable to what a small country uses.
Like what? Give me a country. How much are we talking?
Think Ireland, for example,
Ireland.
using roughly 29.2 terawatt hours of electricity every year.
So you're saying if Google flipped a switch tomorrow and said, all right, everything is AI powered now, it would be like adding another Ireland to the world in terms of energy use.
That's the kind of scale we're talking about in a worst-case scenario.
Wow. Okay. But even if Google wanted to do that, they probably couldn't just snap their fingers and make it happen overnight, right? It's not like they have a spare Ireland's worth of energy just lying around.
You're absolutely right. It's not as if Google could just make it happen overnight.
Right.
There are some major practical limitations, even if they had the budget for it, which we're talking about potentially 100 billion US dollars just for the servers themselves. NVIDIA wouldn't even be able to make that many servers instantly, even if they wanted to. And then, of course, there are the electricity bills on top of that.
Right. Google shareholders probably wouldn't be too thrilled about those bills.
Exactly. So a full-on immediate AI takeover of Google searches, it's probably not going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
But it really highlights the overall trend here, even if it's not an immediate energy black hole. AI's need for energy is only going to increase as it becomes more powerful and more widely used.
Yeah. And that's something we're going to keep digging into right after the break. So even if Google isn't about to plunge the world into darkness to power their AI ambitions,
Yeah.
it seems like the overall trend is pretty clear. AI uses a lot of energy and it's only going to use more.
Exactly, and it's not just speculation either. New Street Research, they're another firm that's been digging into this, and they came up with similar projections to semi-analysis, though a little
Yeah.
bit less extreme. They figure Google would need something like 400,000 servers if they were going to go all in on AI across their services. And those servers would consume a massive 22.8 terawatt hours of energy every year.
Okay, so maybe not a whole Ireland worth of electricity, but still an enormous amount of power. It makes you wonder, is there any way to make AI more sustainable? I mean, surely people are working on making it more energy efficient, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's a ton of research and development happening right now focused on both the hardware and the software to make AI more efficient. It's a huge area of focus in the field.
Eh.
One really promising example is Google's GLAM model. It was actually trained on 7 times more data than GPT-3, but it used almost 3 times less energy.
Wow, that's a massive improvement. That kind of efficiency boost, it feels like a game changer. Does that mean we've kind of cracked the code? Can we all just relax now knowing that AI can be much more energy efficient?
Well, I wish it were that simple. You see, there's this kind of ironic paradox at play here. It's called the Jevons paradox.
The Jevons paradox. Okay, that sounds a little ominous. What is that exactly?
Basically, back in the day, a guy named Jevons observed that when you make something more efficient, it doesn't always mean that people use less of it.
Really? That seems counterintuitive.
It does, right. But think about it. When something becomes more efficient, it often becomes cheaper or easier to use, and that can actually lead to even more demand, which in the end means more overall consumption.
So even if we make AI super energy efficient, people might just end up using it even more, and we'd end up wiping out all the gains we made in efficiency.
That's the danger. And this AI gold rush that we're seeing right now, with everyone eager to develop and use these tools, it could be a textbook case of the Jevons paradox in action. We're seeing this massive increase in demand for AI, even while we're still figuring out how to power it sustainably.
It's like we're racing against ourselves, trying to make AI more efficient before we use so much of it that it negates all our progress.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, are there any other kind of unexpected twists to this whole AI and energy puzzle?
Well, there's an interesting one, and it actually involves the world of cryptocurrency.
Okay.
Remember how we were talking about all those powerful GPUs that are needed to train and run these AI models? It turns out that a recent shift in the cryptocurrency world might have unintentionally thrown a bit of a curveball into the equation.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Tell me more. What does cryptocurrency have to do with AI's energy use?
It all comes back to the hardware. Last year, Ethereum, the second largest cryptocurrency, made a big change and switched to a much more energy-efficient method for their transactions, which is great news for the environment, by the way. Their estimated energy consumption dropped by a massive 80.7 terawatt hours annually. But here's the thing. That switch also meant that a lot of really powerful computing equipment suddenly became available.
So now there are all these powerful computers that were being used for mining cryptocurrency, just sitting idle.
Not necessarily, and this is where it gets interesting. Guess what those computers also happen to be really good at?
What?
Powering AI applications.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that old cryptocurrency mining equipment is now being repurposed to fuel the AI boom?
Exactly.
That's kind of wild.
It is. It's like giving those computers a whole new lease on life, but with a whole new set of consequences.
So how much are we talking about here? How much old mining equipment is being used for AI?
Well, it's estimated that around 20% of those old Ethereum mining GPUs, which is a huge number, could be repurposed for AI. And we're talking about a potential energy shift of 16.1 terawatt hours annually,
Yeah.
just from that hardware alone.
So even with the best intentions, things can get really complicated really quickly when it comes to AI. So where does this leave us? What's the takeaway from all of this?
Well, I think it leaves us in a position where we need to be realistic, but also aware of the complexities. On the one hand, there's no doubt that AI's hunger for energy is a serious concern,
Oh.
especially as it keeps growing more popular. But at the same time, We have to remember that this is still a very new technology.
Right.
There are so many unknowns, so much we're still figuring out. It's kind of like the Wild West out there, in a way.
It's a lot to wrap our heads around. So AI's energy use is something we need to keep an eye on, but it's not like a doomsday scenario. What's the main thing our listeners should take away from all of this when it comes to AI and how it affects everything?
The biggest thing to remember is that we need to start thinking about AI's energy footprint right now, not years down the road. It's so easy to get caught up in all the cool stuff AI can do, but we can't forget about the energy it takes to make all that happen.
Right, like it's not free no matter how magical it seems.
Exactly. And as we talked about earlier, just trying to make AI more efficient, well, that might not be the whole answer because of the Jevons paradox. We could end up just using even more AI, which would wipe out any energy savings.
Right, it's like when you buy a more fuel-efficient car, you might be tempted to drive it more.
Exactly. So alongside efficiency, we also need to be more aware of when we really need AI. We've got to break out of this mindset that we need an AI solution for every single problem. Sometimes a simpler solution, one that doesn't use as much energy, might be just as good.
It's like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
Right, exactly. And this goes for everyone, not just the big tech companies, but all of us.
Mm.
As AI becomes a bigger part of our lives, we all need to use it responsibly and think about its environmental impact.
It's about making smarter choices about how and when we use these powerful tools. And for that, it seems like transparency is key. If we want to use AI responsibly, we need to know how much energy it actually uses.
Right,
Oh,
absolutely. Imagine if all the companies making these AI tools had to tell us upfront how much energy they use. Think of it like a nutrition label for AI.
I love that. A nutrition label for AI.
So you know what you're getting into, energy-wise,
Hmm.
before you use a tool or a service.
That's such a good idea. And just like nutrition labels help us make healthier choices about the food we eat, having that kind of information about AI could encourage everyone to build and use AI in a more sustainable way. People could make more informed choices, and developers would be motivated to come up with even more energy-efficient solutions.
Exactly. Transparency can really drive positive change.
Yeah.
It's not about being anti-AI, it's about giving everyone the information they need to make good decisions.
Well said. It's clear that AI is here to stay, and it's only going to become more powerful and more integrated into our lives. But how we manage its impact on the planet, that's the big question. We can't just ignore the energy it uses and hope for the best.
I completely agree. And as AI becomes more accessible and we start seeing it everywhere, even on our personal devices, it's a responsibility we all share.
Mm.
We need to be aware of how our choices, even small ones, can add up and impact the environment.
That's a great point to end on. This has been a fascinating deep dive, and it's definitely given us a lot to think about. We hope you've enjoyed it too, and hopefully it sparked some ideas about how we can all work towards a future where AI is a force for good, not just for our technological advancement, but for our planet as well.